Presenting Wendys to South Africa. This is Deuya.
I'm Heather Barnes.
Alessandra.
I'm Viviana.
And I briefly explain Wendys. Wendys was founded by a man by the name of David Thomas. When he was a young boy, he had always dreamed of being able to provide Americans with the best tasting food at the best quality possible. His dream later came true, but Wendys stands for more than just their spare burgers. Wendys makes sure that the quality of that food is always fresh. Their burgers are always made from fresh beef that was cooked to your order and served directly from the grill to the customer's plate. Because of this, Wendys was already the winner of many food surveys these past few years. But it wasn't easy maintaining such high quality. But the heads of Wendys had a plan. They kept a core menu that allowed for certain things to always be offered every Wendys. And most alternative meals were based off of a slight variation of this core. It made it cheaper to run the business and therefore easier to keep the quality control high. David Thomas was involved in much more than just hamburgers. He always tried to instill a sense of corporate social responsibility and the sense that the companies owe the society and not the other way around. Outside of the company, David set up the David Thomas Foundation for Adoption. He would go and work with the children himself. On top of this, he also established the Thomas Center at Duke University. He was a part of the American Lung Association, helped with the GD programs, 911 emergency service, and so on. This was the type of responsibility that Dave instilled in his workers, his corporations, and his legacy. Next, South Africa is a middle-income country with an abundant supply of resources and well-developed infrastructure. As you can see from this graph, South Africa's GDP has greatly increased in just the last 5 years. This means the standard of living has increased. This is a good opportunity for Wendys to enter the market.
So just to take a quick look at Wendy's today before we talk about going into the market, we just have a couple of ratios, and I'm sure everybody's taken accounting. And so we want to start up 5 franchises all at once, and Alessandra will get into it more later. But behind all of the data that we had for their financial records for the past couple of years, they have enough money that they can be able to get just into cash immediately so that they can put it straight into South Africa. And they also have enough funds to lean back on in case something does go wrong and they want to start over, and then go back into a different country or back into South Africa. And so for our competitors, we have global competitors in South Africa. And while McDonald's and Burger King are there, our main competitors actually are KFC, because they do a much bigger business and they have succeeded. And we believe that their menu is different enough that we think we can differentiate ourselves from KFC. But we do want to take point, the way that they incorporated local consumers' tastes into their own, into their business plan. They created ads where they sort of taught the consumers when to eat KFC, because food like this isn't really the same fast food that's locally available throughout South Africa. And so they showed like buckets where you could buy them for the family and you could have them at sporting events. KFC actually also sponsored a local cricket team, like a little league cricket team, and so they did that before starting up their company to sort of gain trust from consumers, and we'll get into that as well, but that's kind of what we want to do. So we have local direct competitors and indirect competitors. For our direct competitors, the only really big one is Steers, but they compete with Burger King mostly, and they sort of have advertisements that go back and forth, joking about how the other company is just not as good and that their products aren't as good either. For our indirect competitors, Biltong Meats, it's not one company, it's a different type of product, but a lot of type of companies make them, and it's basically like jerky mixed with salami together, but people eat it for snacks throughout the day. Pro Nutro is a type of almost like oatmeal, I guess is the way you could explain it. And what we found from our research is that American breakfast menus didn't really go over well in South Africa. And so when we talk about trying to acquire local players, we think that maybe if we could buy out one of the suppliers of Biltong Meats or for this breakfast brand, because there are a lot of people that make it, we think it's cheap and it's a good way to sort of incorporate local tastes into our Wendy's franchises. Paparotti's Pizza is an indirect competitor because their layout is completely different. They're much more of a sit down and you stay there and eat. And they're also geared towards a higher end consumer. Right now, when we start our first 5 franchises, we're only looking at lower middle class and middle class. And people from the lower class have started to move into the middle class, and we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so I'm not going to mention all of them because some of them come up later on, but one of our good strengths is while we do have a strong supply from the United States of USDA beef, and we've been known for fresh quality, really good products, and everything's just made fresh, we do want to try and cut costs later on, and we think that the best way to do that would be to find local suppliers. But as we see, one of our main threats is that there is a problem with foodborne illnesses, especially in beef, and so cutting costs might be a problem. We might have to still continue to ship it from the United States, but possibly the vegetables, and like I said, some of the other menu items that we want to incorporate locally could be cheaper because they're from there. One of our biggest threats is more international expansion of some of our other global competitors. Right now, Burger King is pretty big, McDonald's is not as big, but they could start to expand because they've done pretty well for themselves. And also, if local players, different fast food joints, start to consolidate to try and fend off foreign companies. Yeah, so that's our main. Okay, so our potential target market. And so for the past couple of years, 5% per year is pretty much how the economy's been growing. Fast food has been up 18%, and consumer spending has gone up 7%. Now, prosperity has reached those that couldn't, and as I mentioned, people that were in the lower class have made their way into the middle class, and this is because the effects from apartheid ending are still relevant today because people are still getting out of that situation, and some of the poorest areas, which is one of the places we're going to set up a franchise, is now one of our target markets because they're closer to the middle class. So what we want to target is mostly working parents with kids. We've noticed that there's an increase in women in the workforce, so they're single mothers. And we'll get into it, but it's pretty much people that have cash, but they don't have the time. And so fast food joints are basically the best option for them. For our future plans, I don't know if anybody knows Tim Hortons, but they're actually like a cafe, kind of like the McCafe to McDonald's. And Tim Hortons is actually connected with Wendy's, and they're mostly only in Canada. But what we're hoping is that maybe in the future, because Wendy's we don't think really relates to the upper class in South Africa, maybe we could open up Tim Hortons in different sections, so it's more like cafes and they have breakfast, lunch menus, it's not really dinner, and so we feel like maybe we could try and enter into that market as well. So from our market entry strategy, I mentioned we wanted to set up our franchises. Alessandro's going to talk about the employees that we're hiring and how we're going to train them. But like Daewoo mentioned, with instilling our corporate social responsibility, I talked to you about how KFC had sponsored a local cricket team, and we know that rugby and cricket are both really big, and so we thought about maybe sponsoring our own team or sponsoring like a rugby sevens kind of competition and getting our name out there because you can have stands. As I mentioned, with the 2 indirect competitors, joining with them we think would give us a great advantage to getting into the local consumer tastes. And yeah, the rest Alessandro will actually go into more with employees. So.
All right, for our brand strategy, new product innovations and